For decades, the Kim family had ruled the country like an unshakable dynasty. Politics wasn't just their career, it was in their blood. The nation admired them, trusted their speeches, celebrated their victories, and worshipped their image as leaders who always put the people first. But behind the shining curtain, there lived secrets so dark that not even the most daring journalists could touch them. Deals made in shadows, silenced voices, power bought with blood. Kim Taehyung had grown up breathing this world. In the beginning, the dirt under his family's empire had unsettled him, had even disgusted him, but poison spreads quietly. Over the years, his heart had hardened, his eyes had learned to look away, and the taste of corruption no longer felt bitter for the world. He was the golden face of politics, the charming young Kim who carried his family's legacy with grace. For himself, he was just a man who had stopped fighting the monster he lived with. On the other side stood the Lees. If the Kims symbolized power, the Lees symbolized justice. Lee Min-soo was a lawyer who had never lost sight of his oath justice before everything. Fearless in court, respected by all, he was the man people prayed to when they felt powerless. His daughter, YN, had inherited his fire, though she chose a different path. She wasn't a lawyer but a social worker, dedicating her life to those who had nowhere else to go. At the women's shelter she supervised, she was more than a worker, she was hope itself. The kind of woman who didn't just speak about change, but fought for it every single day.
It was only a matter of time before their worlds collided, his built on secrets, hers built on truth. Now, starting, please like the video, you will forget it later. In was admired by the people just as much as any politician in the capital. To South Korea, she was the image of honesty, selfless, brave, and determined to bring change. What she didn't know was how deep the dirt ran beneath the surface of politics, how the game was played behind closed doors. She saw politics as a tool for service, not as a battlefield of lies.
And that's when their worlds collided, truth against corruption, light against shadow, in versus Kim Taehyung. Taehyung first visited the women's shelter one breezy afternoon, surrounded by cameras and his team. The visit was meant for publicity, another chance for the Kims to display their generosity. He donated a generous amount, spoke warmly with the women and their companions, assuring them of resources and support. His assistant nodded, his team clapped, the cameras flashed. To the world, it was just another polished Kim moment. But YN saw something else. Behind the perfect suit and the charming smile was a man who listened carefully, who met her eyes when she spoke about the shelter's struggles. He was handsome, undeniably so, but what struck her more was the way he paid attention, as if her words mattered. And when she spoke, her confidence caught him off guard. Her gaze was steady, her voice sure, and her laughter soft yet strong enough to linger in his chest. For the first time in years, Kim Taehyung didn't want to look anywhere else. Their conversation was brief, sprinkled with small jokes and gentle laughter. By the time he left, he had slipped his personal number into her hand. In case you ever need anything, he had said smoothly. Her heart skipped, but she accepted. His did too. And though the visit had ended, Taehyung didn't stay away. Sometimes, without his security, without cameras, without his team, he returned quietly, just him. In knew why, she felt it too. Those visits turned into longer talks, comfort found in each other's presence. From the shelter to late-night cafes, coffee turned into dinners, dinners into shared secrets, and before long, love bloomed in a place neither of them had expected. One evening, under the soft glow of city lights, he took her hand, his voice low but certain, "Marry me." And she said yes. Lee House YN couldn't hide her happiness when she finally told her father. The way her eyes lit up, the way her voice softened as she spoke about him, Lee Min-soo had never seen his daughter like this before. He smiled, warmth in his gaze, but there was a shadow behind it too. "I'm happy for you, my daughter," he said gently. "But remember one thing, politicians. They seem innocent on the outside, but under the table, they play dirty." That's the truth of power. YN laughed lightly, waving her hand as if brushing away a silly thought. Maybe most of them, DDA, but not him. He's different. I don't know how to explain it. He's the one I want. Her cheeks burned with a blush as she lowered her eyes. Lee Min-soo watched her, half worried, half amused. She was so sure, so full of faith. That same stubborn spark he had seen in her since childhood was now tied to a man he barely knew. But in the end, she was his daughter, and her happiness was his prayer. He smiled softly, resting his hand on her head like he always did when blessing her. Then you have my blessing. There was a pause, his tone light but curious. When is his family coming to meet us? At that, YN's eyes widened. The question hadn't even crossed her mind, and suddenly her chest tightened. We didn't discuss that part, she admitted quickly, rising from the sofa. Good night, DDA. Before he could say more, she slipped away to her room, her cheeks warm, her heart strangely unsettled. Lee Min-soo leaned back, chuckling softly to himself. This girl, he murmured. But deep inside, he couldn't shake the unease pressing at the edges of his mind. In room later that night, YN curled up on her bed, hugging her pillow as she dialed his number. It didn't even take 2 rings before Taehyung answered, his voice low and warm. He was lying in his own bed, a lazy smile tugging at his lips, thinking of only her. You reached safely, she asked, softly. Ahem, he hummed. There was a teasing lilt in his tone that made her frown playfully. In's heart skipped. Wait, don't tell me you were thinking about our wedding night, he whispered, her face instantly burning. Taehyung laughed, the sound deep and rich. Tae. She squealed, hiding her face under the blanket. I'm not talking to you. Don't say that, he coaxed gently. I love you. The most in the world. Her blush softened into a smile. I told Dad about us, you did. His tone lifted, hopeful. He accepted, right? Yeah, YN whispered. He's happy, just a little concerned, you know. Concerned about what? He's a girl's dad, Tae. It's natural. He chuckled softly. He doesn't need to be. His daughter is my world. YN smiled so wide her cheeks hurt. He wants to know when your family is coming. There was a silence. Taehyung's smirk faltered, and his voice dropped. I'll tell them tomorrow. You didn't already. No, he admitted. We all live separately, but tomorrow. Mom has called for a family dinner at the Kim mansion. I'll go. I'll tell them. Her stomach twisted with nervousness. What if they don't like me? I don't care, Taehyung said firmly, his tone leaving no space for doubt. You're marrying me, not them, and I love you. No arguments. YN sighed, smiling at her stubborn man. Bingo, hard-headed KIMTAEHYUNG, I love you, Lee YN. Then he paused with a grin she could hear through the line. Oh wait, sorry soon-to-be Mrs. KIMTAEHYUNG. YN blushed so hard she buried herself under her blanket again. I love you too, she whispered. And just like that, they talked until late into the night, dreams, teases, and promises echoing softly between them until sleep finally pulled them both under. The long dining table at the Kim mansion gleamed under the chandelier, filled with polished silverware and dishes no one truly cared about. Family dinners in the Kim house weren't about food, they were about power, strategy, and control. That night, as everyone settled in, Taehyung put down his glass and spoke clearly, his voice cutting through the hum of casual conversation. I want you all to know something. I'm getting married. The words froze the table. All eyes shifted to him. Mrs. Kim was the first to break the silence, her expression sharp. And what benefit does this bring to the family? Taehyung leaned back, calm but firm. This isn't about benefits. I love her. That's the only reason. Mrs. Kim's eyes narrowed. Still, it's not important unless it benefits us. Grandpa Kim, the oldest voice in the room, cleared his throat, his gaze heavy but unreadable. "It's good," he said slowly. Mr. Kim turned to him, incredulous. "What's good in that?" "Tell me," Grandpa asked, eyes flicking back to Taehyung. "She's a social worker, isn't she?" Taehyung nodded once. "Yes." Grandma Kim leaned forward, her smile small but calculated. "Then it's beneficial. The heir of the Kim family marrying a social worker, it strengthens our image. People will admire us even more." Namjoon, sitting quietly till now, finally spoke. "That can be a +1 for us. Public trust will grow." But Taehyung shook his head, voice steady. "I don't care about any of that. I will marry her." "That's final." Grandpa's expression didn't change, but his words carried weight. "Then we will go to her house this weekend." "Great," Grandma agreed smoothly. "It's decided." But Mrs. Kim wasn't satisfied. She pressed further, her tone sharp. "She's famous for her hard work and honesty. Don't you see? That could be a problem." Mr. Kim chuckled, waving a hand dismissively. "No problem we can't deal with." "Everything bends with time," Grandma added softly, her eyes glancing at Namjoon's wife, then Jin's wife, both of them sitting with their heads lowered, eating quietly. "Everything changes once you get married. We tamed before too." The words hung heavy in the air, and the wives didn't dare look up. Breaking the tension, Jin finally said, "I won't be able to join. I have to go to Japan to meet the minister." Grandpa nodded in approval. "Do it. We'll handle everything here. Just make sure you're back in time for the wedding." Taehyung stayed quiet after that, eating in silence. His heart, however, was lighter than it had been in years. No matter the calculations, no matter the politics, Sin was going to be his forever. The Lee living room had never seen such grandeur before. One by one, the Kim servants entered, their arms full, jewelry boxes stacked neatly, luxury dresses draped in silk covers, shoes in glossy bags, trays of exotic fruits, and endless boxes of sweets. By the time everything was arranged, the modest room looked too small, overflowing with wealth that seemed out of place in the Lee's simple home. Maria, the maid, stood frozen, her eyes darting from one glittering item to the next, unable to believe the display. Yan and Mr. Lee exchanged a look, both slightly overwhelmed. On the couch sat Grandpa and Grandma Kim, flanked by Mr. and Mrs. Kim, their posture regal, their eyes taking in everything like judges at court. Mr. Lee laughed nervously, trying to lighten the air. There was no need for all of this. Grandma Kim's smile was sweet, but her tone carried authority. "Why not? We couldn't come empty-handed when we're here to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage for our Taehyung." Yan sat beside her father, her hands neatly folded on her lap. Across from her, Taehyung sat in his sharp suit, posture confident, legs spread with ease. His eyes locked on her, refusing to look anywhere else. When their gazes met, he winked playfully. Her eyes widened, her cheeks flushing red as she quickly looked down. Taehyung hid his laugh behind a small smirk. The talks continued, the air heavy with formality. Then Grandpa Kim leaned forward, his voice steady and final. "Your daughter won't take even a needle from here. We are against dowry and such things. All wedding shopping will be done by us. Taehyung will provide her with whatever she needs." To prove his point, Taehyung pulled out his sleek wallet, slid out a black card, and placed it on the table in front of Yan without hesitation. Her heart skipped as her eyes flickered from the card to his face. "There's no need for that," Mr. Lee said firmly, shaking his head. Mr. Kim leaned back, his tone calm but resolute. "This is how it has been for years in our family. That won't change." The discussion carried on, voices rising and settling again, until finally, the marriage date was fixed 3 weeks later. The engagement was skipped altogether, for Taehyung had already slipped a ring on YN's finger long ago. But Mr. Lee had his own tradition to fulfill. He excused himself briefly and returned with a velvet box, opening it to reveal a simple but elegant ring that Mrs. Lee had bought years ago for her future son-in-law. With a warm smile, he handed it to YN. Her hands trembled slightly as she slid the ring onto Taehyung's finger, her cheeks burning while the Kim family looked on. Cameras clicked softly as a few photos were taken, formal, stiff, yet carrying a hint of intimacy only they could feel. After a dinner that was polite but heavy with undercurrents, the Kim family finally rose, leaving behind their mountain of gifts. The living room slowly felt bigger again, quieter. But for YN, the air still carried the weight of everything that had just been decided. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. With the Kim family in charge of preparations, the wedding wasn't just a ceremony, it was a grand event, something the entire country was already whispering about. Designers, planners, jewelers, florists every day, someone new walked into the Lee house with samples and sketches. YN sat in her room one afternoon, surrounded by swatches of fabric and jewelry cases. She touched one of the heavy necklaces and sighed. How am I supposed to wear this without breaking my neck? Just then, her phone buzzed. Taehyung, did you try the wedding dress fitting? He asked, his voice smooth as always. In rolled her eyes, smiling despite herself. Not yet. They brought so many options. I don't even know where to start. I do, Taehyung said, chuckling softly. Just pick the one that will make me forget how to breathe when I see you walking toward me. Her cheeks turned crimson. Taehyung. He laughed at her flustered tone, stretching lazily on his couch. What? I'm serious. Don't you know how crazy you make me already? In bit her lip, trying to hide her blush even though he couldn't see her. Stop saying things like that. Why? His voice dropped, teasing, you blush so prettily. I can almost see it from here. She groaned, covering her face with her hands. I'm not talking to you. Don't, he whispered with a smile she could hear. You're mine soon, my bride, Mrs. Kim Taehyung. Practice saying it, her heart skipped, her blush deepening. You're impossible. He chuckled again. Impossible for everyone, yes. But only yours. That night, while the families discussed guest lists, menus, and decorations downstairs, Taehyung sneaked into the Lee house garden where YN was sitting quietly under the fairy lights strung across the trees. You're supposed to be inside, she whispered, eyes widening. And miss a moment with my bride, he said smoothly, walking closer. In looked down, her cheeks warm, her lips curving despite herself. He reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. You look beautiful even in this simple dress, he murmured. What will happen to me on the wedding day? She swatted his arm lightly, blushing harder than ever. Kim Taehyung stopped teasing, but he only laughed, his eyes never leaving hers. And as the preparations rushed on around them, in the chaos of arrangements and expectations, they found little moments like these, just him and her, where love bloomed quietly, teasingly, beautifully. The wedding of Kim Taehyung and Lee YN was declared the event of the decade, perhaps even the grandest wedding South Korea had ever seen. From the early hours, the streets outside the Grand Hotel were lined with reporters, cameras flashing endlessly as luxury cars arrived one after another. Political figures, celebrities, business tycoons, everyone wanted to be present, not just to witness a marriage, but to bask in the glory of the Kim family's power. Inside, the hall looked like something out of a dream. Chandeliers sparkled like constellations. The aisle was lined with rare white orchids imported from abroad, and every detail from the golden cutlery to the silk drapes screamed perfection. The Kims had made sure no expense was spared. To the world, they were not just a family of politicians tonight, they were royalty. Behind the curtains, YN stood in her gown, her hands trembling around her bouquet. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. The dress was breathtaking layers of ivory lace, a veil cascading like liquid silver. She looked like the perfect bride, but inside, nerves tangled her thoughts. What if I stumble? What if I ruin it? She whispered to herself. Then the curtain shifted, and Taehyung appeared, dressed in a black suit tailored to perfection, his tie sharp, his presence magnetic. He wasn't supposed to see her yet, but he slipped in anyway, unable to stay away. The moment his eyes landed on her, his heart skipped a beat. God, he whispered, almost breathless. You're unreal. In's face flushed crimson. Taehyung, you're not supposed to be here. He only smiled, stepping closer, until his hand brushed hers. Let them wait. I just needed to see you once, to remind you. You don't need to be nervous. You're marrying me, not them. Forget the cameras, forget the world. Just walk toward me, that's all. Her eyes softened, the storm in her chest easing at his words. She nodded slowly, taking a shaky breath. From the crowd, Mr. Lee watched everything with a quiet smile, but behind it, his heart was heavy. He was proud of his daughter, radiant and brave. But as he looked at the Kim family greeting guests with perfect smiles, he couldn't shake the unease. They played the role of innocence so flawlessly that no one would ever imagine the shadows hiding beneath. He knew what power could do. He knew what politics could twist. And though he held his peace deep inside, a father's worrying refused to let go. The music began, the doors opened, and Wyan stepped onto the aisle. Gasps rippled through the hall as every eye turned to her. Taehyung stood at the altar, his heart hammering but his gaze steady, locked only on her. To him, there was no audience, no politics, no family games. There was only Yn, the woman who had turned his gray world into color. And as she walked closer, her nerves melted under the intensity of his gaze. Step by step, she reached him, and when he took her hand, the hall erupted into applause, cameras flashing, voices cheering. The Kims smiled flawlessly for the world, their image shining brighter than ever. The people saw the perfect family, the perfect couple, the perfect future. But beneath all the glitter, two hearts beat wildly against each other, one in love, one in worrying.